Tonight on The Late Debate. The fight for your vote begins. I asked Sadiq Khan why he deserves a third term at City Hall as anger simmers over ULEZ. Also tonight, Israel-Gaza protests in London and a rise in hate crime. The politics of conflict comes to Westminster.
I've had emails from local parents who are very worried about their children going to a local Jewish school in my constituency because there's been aggressive men standing outside taking photos.
And a stop-start saga of HS2, why the promise of the line coming to Euston is still billions of pounds short. Hello and welcome to The Late Debate. Later in the programme, I'll be joined by three politicians to discuss some of those issues. But first, if you believe one recent poll, Sadiq Khan's got a real fight on his hands to hang on to his job at next year's mayoral elections. Snapping at his heels is Tory candidate Susan Hall, relying in part on anger over ULEZ to help secure the top job, not to mention crime and a shortage of new homes. So the gloves are off. And the man hoping to retain the title of Mayor of London is with me now. Sadiq, welcome to the studio. Why do you want to be Mayor of London for a third term?
Look, the next election is going to be close. The government has changed the rules. So it's now first past the post, but also you need photo ID. So what I'll be explaining to Londoners is the choice at the next mayoral election is to allow a Tory to do to London what they've done to the country, or a Labour mayor working with a Labour government. Imagine what we can do with a Labour government.
Why do you deserve a third term?
Well, let's look at the record with a Conservative anti-London government. Free school meals for the first time ever in our city. Record numbers of council homes despite a Tory government. Reducing toxic air in the centre of our city by 50%. Being tough on crime, tough on the complex causes. Imagine with a Labour government what a Labour mayor could do.
Lots of new council homes, but not enough affordable homes.
Well, let's deal with that. So we're building more council homes, which are affordable, any time since the 1970s. We're completing more homes any time since the 1930s. And that's with a Tory anti-London government. Imagine a Labour mayor working with a Labour government, the difference we can make.
OK, you talk about clean air, but you know how much hostility there has been to the ULEZ extension. Do you regret it?
Well, let's look at the evidence of the ULEZ in central London. We brought it in, despite opposition, a reduction of almost 50% in toxicity, a third fewer children being admitted to hospital because of air pollution. We expanded it to inner London, a further 20% reduction in toxicity, children going to 500 schools benefiting from clean air. We've now expanded it so 9 million Londoners breathe clean air. Now we've made sure every single Londoner who may be adversely affected...
I take it that's no regrets.
Well, no, the key issue is we've made sure there's support available for every Londoner. I wish we could give even more support, but the government's not giving us a penny when they have given support to Birmingham, Bristol, Portsmouth, other parts of the country. But every Londoner now receives support if they've got a car or a minibus or a van. And we're going to carry on helping Londoners.
You say the government didn't give you any support for an extended scrappage scheme. You're now asking the government for support to mitigate the cost of the toll for the Blackwall and Silvertown tunnels. What makes you think they're going to give you any money this time?
Well, let's look at the Silvertown tunnel and the Blackwall tunnel. The plans to build this tunnel at Silvertown were Boris Johnson's plan. The plans to have a toll at both...
But you
Blackwall...
signed it off. Well, when you became mayor, you agreed to those plans.
The plans to have a toll at both Blackwall and Silvertown were Boris Johnson's plans. I agree we need to have more river crossings in that part of London. What I've done, though, since I became mayor, is make sure there's a lane reserved for double-decker buses, at least 20 an hour, make sure there's support for local businesses, local residents, to address the issue of congestion and air quality. What I'm saying to the government is, look, we know that people in that part of London could do with some more support. Why don't you work with me to, yes, address the issue of congestion, yes, address the issue of air quality and support those Londoners.
But what makes you think the government will listen this time and give you money when they didn't for the scrappage scheme?
Oh, listen, if you don't ask, you don't get. I lobby the government, for example, to get rid of no-fault eviction with tenants. They're now doing that. So we asked and we got. I lobby the government for more support in relation to our policing. We've now got that support in relation to more funding for policing. I asked the government for more support in relation to our violence reduction unit. We've now got that support. So you've got to ask, one of the points about being the mayor of this great city is to be a champion and advocate for our city. That could be a Conservative government, as we've had for the last 7.5 years, or hopefully next year, a Labour government working with the Labour Mayor.
You say you've now ruled out road pricing. A lot of opponents of ULEZ extension feared that the cameras were a Trojan horse.
Let me be quite clear, let me be unambiguous in relation to the issue of road user charging. We now have the biggest clean air zone in the world. There is no reason at all to have road user charging. It's off the table, but we are going to do other things to make sure we make progress in relation to the climate emergency and air pollution, more electric buses, planting more trees, retrofitting our homes, more walking, more cycling, no road user charging.
In an election year, are you worried that you'll be seen as the mayor who declared war on the motorist?
No, I'm pro-motorist. I drive myself, as does my wife and my daughters. At the same time, though, we've got to be given alternatives when it comes to public transport, when it comes to walking and cycling. We've got to listen. In our city this year, we've had, again, record temperatures broken in July and September. Last year, temperatures north of 41 degrees. Every year in our city, around 4,000 premature deaths a year linked with air pollution. We've got a choice. Either put your head in the sand, like the Conservatives, or take action like we're doing with Londoners.
Can we talk about HS2? You've been critical of the government's decision to pull the funding from the link from Old Oak Common to Euston. Here's an opportunity for you, isn't there, to be the man who gets the finance, go out there and get the investors.
That's what I did with Crossrail.
So will you do it with HS2?
With
will you become
Crossrail,
the champion of the extension from Old Oak Common to Euston?
With Crossrail, I was the minister that took through the business rate supplement bill that helps pay for Crossrail. I was given a choice in 2018 to throw in the towel. I chose not to do so, got a grip of costs and took it under my control at TfL. What I'm saying to the government is, rather than throwing the towel with High Speed 2, why don't you get a grip on the costs? Why don't you work with, not just me, but great mayors around the country, in Birmingham, in Manchester, in Liverpool, in West Yorkshire, to make this work and work with the private sector. What the government can't do is expect the private sector to pay the entire bill. But also you can't say to Euston, you've had homes demolished, businesses destroyed, blight in that community, and then walk away. That's just not fair.
Can we talk about the conflict, the Israel-Gaza conflict? You were very quick when the attack happened by Hamas to support Israel. Is your support still unequivocal?
Let me be quite clear. The actions of Hamas, a proscribed organisation, were outrageous. It was a terrorist act. We've seen over many, many years the desperate plight of Palestinians living in Gaza. We've seen since October the 8th the catastrophe of, in my view, disproportionate force used by the Israeli government. I think it's collective punishment. What we need to do is to try and de-escalate the violence. What the Israeli government should be doing is allowing food, water, electricity, essential medical supplies to reach the people of Gaza. Many of those people in Gaza, particularly the children, the women, the men, weren't involved in the atrocities of Hamas. And I do worry about the ripple effects of what's happened in the Middle East, affecting our city with an increase in anti-Semitism and an increase in Islamophobia as well. We can't allow what's happening in the Middle East to affect the streets of our city.
Some Conservative MPs think you should ban pro-Palestine marches.
Well, let me be quite clear about this, and I think Conservative MPs should understand what the law is. It's the Home Secretary. Only she has the power to ban any marches. I'm quite clear, though, a cornerstone of our democracy, a cornerstone, is the right to protest.
But do these marches worry you?
The protests that have to be peaceful, lawful and safe. And so the police will be working incredibly hard, again, as they always do this weekend, to make sure people have the right to protest. The right to protest does not mean the right to break the law. And so the police will be taking action if the law is broken.
Should London open its doors to refugees from Gaza?
Listen, we were brilliant in opening our doors to refugees from Ukraine. I think we should be doing much more. I don't accept phrases like, inverted commas, hurricane of migrants. I think the government's been abominable in the last 13 years in relation to creating a hostile environment. I'm really proud some of my best friends are refugees, the children of refugees.
Would you welcome refugees from Gaza?
I think we should be providing a safe haven to all those fleeing persecution, including those who we know having problems in Gaza. My point is this, though. I think the people in Gaza don't want to leave Gaza. That's their home. They've seen the consequences of displacement. What we should be doing as a country who is a close ally of Israel is saying to the government of Israel, please, 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 understand the consequences of the action in Gaza. You're in danger of exacerbating tensions there, but also another generation of young people on both sides are going to grow up with less chance of there being peace. And we should encourage those communities to move towards peace rather than what we've seen for the last 70 years.
Finally, is it going to be a very close race for the election?
Listen, I think the next election is going to be incredibly close. You've reported at every election since 2000. Every election since 2000, the Tories have come first or second. And I say with huge respect and admiration for my friends in the Lib Dems and the Greens, every vote that goes to the Lib Dem and Greens, because of the government changing the voting system, is one less for the Tories to get. Don't allow the Tories to do to London what they've done to the country.
Sadiq Khan, thank you for coming in to talk to us this evening. Now, in a moment, tonight's panel will give us their verdict on what Sadiq Khan had to say, including the impact here in London of the Israel-Hamas conflict. From mass rallies in Westminster to an increase in hate crime, what happened thousands of miles away had repercussions for the capital and sparked debate among our MPs.
Mr. Speaker, Israel unquestionably has the right to defend itself and its citizens. That means targeting Hamas, not innocent civilians, in line with international law.
Most heartbreakingly, I've had emails from local parents who are very worried about their children going to a local Jewish school in my constituency because there's been aggressive men standing outside taking photos, and some of the parents have had their car tyres slashed as well.
Can I also ask my right honourable friend to press upon our Israeli friends the principles of distinction and proportionality in their action, and to avoid any sense in which it looks like a collective punishment is being meted out to the Palestinians in Gaza.
These atrocities were committed by terrorists who do not seek peace and have set back the just cause of Palestinian freedom and statehood, which I have long supported, along with many across this House.
Joining me now is the Labour MP for Mitcham and Morden, Siobhan McDonagh, the Conservative MP for Harrow East, Bob Blackman, and the Liberal Democrat London Assembly member, Caroline Pidgeon. Welcome all of you. Caroline, you're a member of the Police and Crime Committee at City Hall. How worried are you that the conflict between Israel and Gaza is going to put the police in a very awkward position with demonstrations in London?
Well, I'm very worried about the situation in Israel and, of course, the impact it's having on London. You know, I absolutely condemn the terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel and their right to clearly defend their borders. But actually, the impact we're seeing as a London representative is right across the city. Parents afraid to send their children to school, anti-Semitic attacks, Islamophobic attacks. I'm really pleased the police are upping their patrols around the city. I saw many police on my way over here today. But I am worried about this huge rise in hate crime. And, you know, the police will be taking tough action on that, I have no doubt.
And Bob, of course, your constituency has a very large Jewish community.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we've got to remember here that this is the worst atrocity since the Holocaust, with 1,400 dead, 3,500 people still in hospital, and 199 hostages in the hands of the Hamas terrorists. So from that perspective, this is a really serious time for everyone. And the fact is that Israel is going to seek now to eliminate the threat from Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad and all the other terrorist organisations, to get to a position whereby it can never happen again to Israel. And that means, unfortunately, that things are going to get far worse, I think, over the next few weeks. And that means that community tensions are going to be far worse as a result. So we already know that anti-Semitic reports have gone up by 581% since this atrocity. So everyone is concerned.
Are you nervous, Siobhan?
Of course. I mean, what an awful thought to think that a Jewish schoolboy or girl can't wear their uniform on the bus, but that's how some members of the Jewish community feel. I mean, the strength of our city is we come from everywhere, yet we live in the most amazing city in the world.
Do you detect any tension among Labour politicians in London, particularly local councillors, about the party's unequivocal support for Israel?
Certainly, I've not seen any in my constituency or my borough, which is Merton. I would say that all our councillors absolutely agree with the policy as set out by the Labour Party. You know, they believe that Israel has the right to defend itself, and they're also concerned for the Palestinians who are not Hamas. And I think we shouldn't conflagrate the two. You know, your heart has got to go out for them as well.
You're probably not Sadiq Khan's biggest fan, Bob, but do you sympathise with the tightrope he has to walk at the moment?
Well, clearly, the mayor has to bring communities together. One of the concerns I have is that we're going to get community tensions rise. The mayor must then step up to make sure that he tries to cool those tensions. My worry is we saw on the streets of London last week, allegedly we've got another protest on Saturday of people, you know, shouting and singing "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." The reality that means is the elimination of the State of Israel. Now, no action is being taken about that, which is clear anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred. We've got to combat that and prevent it from happening on our streets.
How tough should the police be?
I think the police have to be tough on this. I saw on the overground last week a load of graffiti which was anti-Semitic. I immediately reported that to TfL. Within an hour, that train was out of service, being taken to be cleaned, and they'd reported it to the police and were looking back at records. You know, all the public sector in London has to work together to make sure graffiti, any hate crime is reported and the police to take action. But what I'm really pleased to see is that different faith communities and other community organisations coming together to work to try to reduce tensions. But as Bob says, I think we're in a very, very difficult time, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in the capital.
I mean, I thought Sadiq did a great job coming out straight away after the weekend before last, when there were the Hamas atrocities in Israel, and he stood with the Israeli and Jewish community in London, and they themselves made the point they didn't want anybody to play party politics with this. They believe that Sadiq has been standing square with them.
Can we talk about another big decision?
Can I just say as well, the media have a role to play in this.
Yes.
They must not take the Hamas terrorists' propaganda at face value. And the reporting of the attack on the hospital, I'm afraid, was a complete disaster for community relations and caused a lot of problems.
I don't know whether I've been thinking about this, Bob and Caroline, but I think the mainstream media, people like yourselves on TV stations, are in a way competing with social media. Social media is quick to judgment, and nobody takes any notice if they get it wrong. But if you're the BBC, if you're ITV, it's a very different thing. And I think that we're seeing some of those developments in media play out in front of us.
Can we talk about HS2? Caroline, you were chair of the Transport Committee at the London Assembly for an awful long time. Are you upset that it's not going to go to Manchester?
I have to say, I'm furious about it. I mean, internationally, our reputation is rock bottom by the government cancelling a huge chunk of this project. The idea of high-speed rail is that you can get from one part of the country to the other really quickly, connecting our cities, helping the economies grow. It's about levelling up, something this government talks about. And you look at neighbours like Spain, they can build, 1,500 miles or 2,500 miles of new train, high-speed rail really quickly. We can't even build 330 miles. It's an appalling decision, and I'm really concerned there might be a fire sale of the land, because I would hope any new government who may come in next year, we should put this project back on track. We need to connect the cities. I'd like to see Scotland building down as well to connect up with Scotland. We need to really invest in infrastructure in our country if we're to compete with the rest of the world and if our economy is to grow in the future.
Bob, your government's got it wrong, hasn't it?
Well, clearly, the original idea was to reduce internal air traffic. I'd never understood why the route wasn't going between airports, frankly, to reduce the internal air traffic. The route was the wrong route in the first place. And the question that has to be asked is, how did this project get so out of control in terms of its finances as to be almost unaffordable for the taxpayer to continue?
It happened on your government's watch.
Well, the concept of bringing it to Old Oak Common and then having a position whereby, where do people go from Old Oak Common? Do they go to Euston? Are we going to have a route into Euston or not? Is the concern. Actually, the late Frank Dobson and I agreed on one thing, and that was that Euston was the wrong place anyway. Because if you're going to have high-speed rail, surely you connect it to the Channel Tunnel so that people don't have to travel a huge distance between Euston and St Pancras to continue their journey into Europe.
Should a Labour government recommit to extending to Manchester?
I understand why they won't commit to that now, but I would hope so when they open the books and they see what's there, because we're all talking about growing the economy. You don't grow the economy without these big infrastructure projects that connect places. And I was taken by what Andy Street, the Conservative Mayor of the Midlands, said about, and what Sadiq said earlier, about the mayors getting together with the government, getting together with the private sector to come up with a plan. We've already sunk so much taxpayer money into this. To walk away now is just unforgivable.
Now, all of you have been involved in party conferences for the last few weeks. which of your party came out of them best?
We did. Labour did.
All I say
She's
is
got a
that
point, hasn't she?
The Prime Minister's speech was almost word for word on smoking, exactly what I've been saying in the Commons for years, that we need to combat young people starting to smoke and indeed cracking down on vaping. And that whole section of the speech I was delighted by, because at last we're going to do something about that.
I think the Lib Dems were really buoyant because we haven't had an in-person autumn conference since before the pandemic. So to have everyone there, to have had our recent parliamentary by-election successes, local government successes, and really looking forward to the London elections next year, but also the general election
Your
too.
party's got an issue, or your leader's got an issue, hasn't he, with voter recognition? I think that's a polite way of putting it.
Well, I think all leaders have those issues at times, but quite frankly, in our target seats, it's not about who our leader is, it's about who our candidates are. And in those target seats, people know who our candidates are, who'll be the hard-working MPs, and that's where we'd be putting in a lot of resource and a lot of time. But it's really important that in parts of this country where people want to see the Conservative government removed, if the Lib Dems are in second place, people have the opportunity to vote for them.
Bob, Caroline mentioned that it's not just a general election, we've got a mayoral election. I don't know if you were at the Conservative Friends of Israel event at your party conference where Susan Hall...
I wasn't actually, I was at the Conservative Friends of India, one at it was held at the same time.
You'll have heard what Susan Hall said.
Yeah.
She said that members of the Jewish community are frightened because of the divisive attitude of Sadiq Khan. What did she mean?
It was actually taken out of context, what she
the
actually
words
said.
were pretty...
It always is, isn't it?
But it was taken out of context on a longer
longer
contribution she made. And clearly the concern still is that Jewish members of Jewish friends that are in Israel, not in Israel, but in London, are really concerned about their security and that the mayor isn't doing enough to preserve their security.
Is your mayoral candidate a liability or an asset?
No, she's a clear asset. She holds the mayor to account every single mayor's question time. She's been very good on holding to account and she'd make an excellent mayor of London.
You heard what Susan Hall said. You take a different view.
I take a different view. It's now is not the time to divide. The time is to unite, to support the Jewish community in any way we can in London, and to help those people from the Palestinian community who are very worried in the coming weeks for their friends and their families. That's what London is good at. That's what we stand out as, and mean petty politics isn't the way forward.
Caroline, briefly, Sadiq Khan right? It's a two-horse race between the Tories?
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? We're on 17% in the poll. Rob Blackie's doing a great job as our new Lib Dem mayoral candidate, and we've got a fantastic team of Assembly candidates. You also have votes for the Assembly, so I'd encourage people to be voting Lib Dem there.
Caroline, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you to all my guests tonight, to Sadiq Khan, to Siobhan McDonough, Bob Blackman and Caroline Pidgeon. And another thank you to my editor, Simon Mayers. This is his last show. We'll be back next month. Good night.